Welcome to the webinar. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Today's session is being recorded and it will be distributed after. So if you'd like to share with anyone in your network, please feel free. We are going to have a Q&A at the end, so feel free to raise your hand or submit any questions in the Q&A box, and we will go through that once we're wrapped with the presentation. As we get started, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Elise Alt. I am a Senior Account Manager here at Varnish, and I am joined by Frederick Steen. He is Controller's Product Owner here, and he will talk us through how everything works. So today we're going to talk about an easier way to manage your Varnish setup and get visibility into how it's performing so that you're better able to cache effectively, delivering a good experience for your customers. We will be discussing a solution called Varnish Controller, an administrative console that we've designed specifically to streamline the management of Varnish clusters, route your CDN traffic, and scale on demand. We will also be debuting the integration of Controller and Traffic Router, our secret weapon for managing all of your CDN traffic, but we'll do more on that later. In addition to an introduction and overview of Traffic Router, we will touch on some features that we've added in Controller 3.0. Controller 3.0 contains updates based specifically on feedback that we've received from customers, so it builds on the previous version and has been developed in close collaboration with our enterprise partners. This is how we like to work to make sure that we're building tools that people need. So what is Varnish Controller and why has it been developed? If you're not familiar with Controller, then let me set the scene for you. We know that one of the best features of Varnish is the flexibility and power of Varnish Configuration Language, or VCL. You can push changes in real time and completely optimize how your web cache functions to best suit your needs. It gives total control of content caching policies, HTTP behavior, and routing, and compiles down to C and is really fast at executing. Working with VCL is great when you're managing small Varnish setups, but things can get quite complex when working with Varnish clusters and needing to adjust VCL files across multiple instances and keep things running smoothly. So Controller comes from the need to make it easier to work with larger Varnish setups without sacrificing any of the power of VCL. Essentially, Controller makes it easy to keep clusters of Varnish servers up to date with the correct VCL, and does this in seconds for any number of Varnish servers. Many other tasks can also be done at the click of a button, saving lots of time. It adds a visual interface to Varnish Enterprise too, and that includes graphs which update in real time for monitoring and health check. So first, Frederick is going to share a quick look around a Controller before focusing on some of the new features. Frederick, I'm going to pass it over to you. Frederick, I believe you're on mute.
Sorry.
There we go.
Okay, thank you. Hello. Yes, so the Varnish Controller is a system that aids in managing a cluster of Varnish servers. Some new concepts have been introduced to create a system that is both generic and also highly flexible. It consists of three main parts. First, we have the agent. The agent runs together with Varnish and interacts with the process. It keeps tracks of state, it deploys VCL, and it collects counters and statistics. Then we have the brains process. The brains process actually handles all the system-wide decision and is the coordinator of the system. And in addition to that, we have the last one, which is the API gateway. It serves a REST API and is used by the CLI and also by the web dashboard. It's also available for customers to use. All of these servers can be scaled horizontally by adding more processes of the same kind. All internal communications happens over a lightweight, high performance message bus service, and is of course encrypted via TLS. So let's have a look at the controller. When I log into the controller, we get welcomed by the default dashboard. Here we can see the collective stats for all of the servers combined in the system. You can modify the default dashboard, or you can add new widgets to the default dashboard, or you can create your own custom dashboard. The Varnish Controller has both near real-time statistics and historical stats. with the help of vMod accounting, we are able to present statistics per domain and per VCL basis. Let's have a look at the servers in this system. So in this setup, we have four Varnish servers. We have 2 in the US and we have 2 in the EU. Adding more servers to the Varnish controller, they will automatically show up here. So that you start the Varnish agent together with Varnish, it will actually announce itself to the Varnish controller and it will pop up in this list and be ready to serve content by getting VCL deployed. So this is used for auto scaling, which I will show a little bit more. Then we have something called configurations. Configuration is actually how we configure the controller and where to deploy the different VCLs. In this view, we can see that we have a VCL group name, which is the player. And we have something called deployment configuration. The deployment configuration tells you where and how many Varnish servers this VCL should get deployed to. So in this case, we have chosen the US tag, and we have 2 matching servers that has the US tag. And the deployment range here tells the controller that if it is deployed at minimum 1 server, up to maximum 2 servers. So that means if you set this to between 1 and 100, the Varnish controller will continue to deploy this configuration to new servers that come with the same tag that matches this, in this case, the US, up to 100 servers. After that, it will not deploy to these new ones. And then, of course, we have the actual VCL that is used. And you can use includes for together with this VCL. So let's have a look at each configuration has its own dashboard. So we can look at this dashboard for this player configuration. This is the default dashboard for this, but we can add an extra widget to this. So I will create a new widget. I've saved here. It's a request client versus backend. We make this a full-sized one. We then choose to use this based on a VCL group. So the VCL group we will be using is the player one. We will use the near real-time data. We would like us to be a line chart, thousands. And then we can choose from the different counters that is specific to this configuration. So we could say that this is counters that is specific to this VCL. So in this, I would like to look for the client. There we have the client, and let's see the backend request count. And we will save this. Now we have this graph. Yes, over to you, Elise.
The controller is all about making it easier to update new servers with VCL to get them up to speed immediately as traffic changes. You might need to do this, for example, when your traffic increases and you need to scale capacity up to support it. But it also makes it easier to run multi-tenancy setups in Varnish. You can visualize these two processes where auto-scaling is about discovering new instances and automatically deploying a VCL file, and multi-tenancy where you're deploying different VCL files to the same servers. You could be running different domains on the same node or using different configurations for different types of content. Frederick, can you show us how to add an additional deployment?
I certainly can. So then we go to VCL group. We create a new VCL group. We choose a name for it. We choose the example name, and we want this to be a shared server. That means that you can run several VCLs on the same server. This the Varnish controller will actually create a routing VCL that will make sure that the correct HTTP host header is matched with the correct VCL. We add a domain. And then we add a deployment configuration. In this case, we would like this to be in the EU, 2 matching servers. We would like this to scale up to 10. And we would like to have them on the US servers. We want this to be scaled up to 10 at least. And then we will create a VCL. We can either choose already uploaded VCL, or we can create a new one. So let's create a new one. And then it's only to create and deploy. So while we are waiting here, this is tested for that the syntax is correct, that it matches the correct vmods, and then it actually deploys this on a server. So in this case, we can see that this one has been deployed, and we can also see on the servers here that we now have 3 different VCL groups deployed. And we can also see that it's now working. So over to you, Elise.
Great, thanks. When we're developing software like Controller, we're always looking for customer feedback. And one new feature added in 3.0 is something requested by a Varnish customer. Varnish Controller 3.0 supports the Varnish cache invalidation techniques, purging, banning, and key-based invalidation. Cache invalidation is important for replacing cache content to bring it up to date. Online newspapers, for example, depend on caching to cope with traffic spikes. But when there's breaking news, it should appear immediately, replacing previously cached content. Purging is the basic cache invalidation mechanism in Varnish and simply removes the purged object to free up space. Controller also now supports banning, which allows expression-based cache invalidation. This means that you can invalidate multiple objects from the cache without the need for individual purge calls. So Frederick, was this difficult before? What's in the controller to make it easier?
I can show you. So the invalidations that you can do in the controller is fully integrated into the controller. So that means that we know the different configurations, we know your different VCLs, and we know your domains. So to create the invalidation, we can do this either via the CLI, the API, or via the dashboard. In this case, we want to invalidate the player. We can then choose to do this by domain, but no real need. Then we have something called invalidation sequence. The invalidation sequencing is if you're using a tiered setup where you actually have Varnish storage nodes and Varnish edge nodes. You always want to purge your storage first before you purge your edge servers. So with the invalidation sequence, you can actually make sure that you always purge your storage nodes before you actually purge your edges. And then we choose which purging method, and then we can add as many URLs we want. But for the simplicity, we use one URL. And also we have something called monitor servers for invalidation. This means that when you're running this invalidation, if one of the Varnish servers are restarted or they are down or something that makes it inaccessible, the controller will actually monitor this Varnish server. So when it comes up, and if that is in before the max execution time, this invalidation will be run. So we just invalidate this. And this invalidation request gets sent to the different agents, and they run it from their local to their local Varnish server. So yeah, over to you, Elise.
Great, so that's been a quick tour of the main functionality and benefits in Controller. Hopefully you can see how it functions as a control panel for Varnish so that you can do things like push out VCL to multiple servers as you need, understand your traffic and caching health, and update the cache across your network quickly. Now, just as a quick reminder, we are doing a Q&A at the end of this session, so please feel free to submit any of your questions to that Q&A box. And now we are going to take things up a notch. It's time to look at the traffic router. You may or may not have heard about traffic router, so here's a quick overview before we dive into the first look. We've integrated it into Controller to make managing your CDN traffic seamless. And this isn't just about your own Varnish CDN traffic, but any public CDNs that you're using. Traffic router makes sure clients fetch content from the optimal location for the highest quality experience. So locations include specific cache nodes, specific data centers, and public CDNs. And routing decisions are based on distance, node availability, utilization, and customer rules. Frederick, can you talk a little bit more about this? Frederick, I think you might be muted.
Sorry. Okay. So as Elise just mentioned, the traffic router is fully integrated into the controller. So to get there, we'll start with the controller dashboard again. We now have traffic routers that is just like a Varnish Controller agent. It announces itself to the controller and it pops up here and it is usable by the system. We have two routers started here. They are tagged just like the controller agents, and we can click on a traffic router to get more information. So we can see the tags it has, we can see the GPS coordinates, and we can see the different features that are enabled for this specific traffic router. You can see that it's also doing its own health checks, and also we can look at the rules. How do you configure the traffic router? We do that with routing rules. So in this case, we have a video routing rule. This is set to random to show very clearly how the traffic router is actually routing the traffic between servers. But we also have a history, and history is a small rule engine that cache that will actually send the same client to the same node within a specific timeout. So if I pull this up here, we can then set the different timeouts. And to that, we also have GeoIP. So then you will choose the Varnish server that is closest to your client. We also have tag-based routing, and that is sending requests based on the controller tags. So router tags matching server tags. So that could be a use case for that could be if you have a router in a specific data center, and then you tag your servers with that data center, and then you can make sure that your request has come to your router, and then it gets routed to servers that is in the same data center. Say that you would use Anycast for actually getting traffic to the router. And then of course we have least utilized. As the traffic router is fully integrated in controller, we get information from the controller agents about the utilization on each Varnish server, and then we can pick the least utilized server based on that information. And we also have the external route, and the external route is like a exit node where you can actually choose to go to different external points. So in this case, maybe you would like to route as much traffic as possible to your own servers, but if they get fully utilized, you actually want to send this traffic to a public CDN to take over the load. But now let's have a look at the demo. So what I have here is a short video which is traffic routed. So this was the player URL that we used in the VCL groups. That's this one, and we can see that is the URL used here. And then we can see that this URL is traffic routed. So when you hit this, the traffic router will generate a redirect. And here we can see the actual server that is used. As we're using random, we are jumping around a bit here, and that's just to make it very visual. And also this, yes, let's see. I jumped a bit. Yes, okay. So as the traffic router is integrated into controller, we can stop servers, and the router will stop using that node right away. So I will bring out a console of the Varnish CLI, so you will be able to see this while the video is playing. So I will now stop 2 servers. So we can see here's the service that is using. We can soon see that the controller will be detecting that the servers are not responding anymore. So now Varnish server 2.1 and 2.2 is down, and we can see that the video is still running, and we are only routing traffic to 1.2 and 1.1. So I can jump around just to see that this, and I can actually start these again, and we should see those two servers being used again. So now I have started them. You can see that the traffic router has detected that these two servers are up and running again, and we can see that they now get traffic. And the video was ending. Yes, so that's a sneak peek of the traffic router. Over to you, Elise.
Great. So thank you so much, Frederick. We are now going to turn things over to the Q&A, and I did see a question in the chat. So how well does controller integrate with Varnish running in containers? For example, K8s, Amazon, ECS, Fairgate, etc. Fargate.
Yes, the Varnish controller has been developed with as a cloud-friendly and container-friendly application. So the controller is built actually to work with this. We also distribute this as Docker containers, and we run this in Kubernetes, in AWS, Azure, and all the different cloud providers. So that has gone into the beginning of when we started developing the controller.
Great. So another question that we just got, Varnish uses HTTP. Does a traffic router support other routing mechanisms?
Yes, the traffic router will also support DNS-based routing.
Okay, we've got a bunch of questions coming in the chat. So back to our first question about how well does Varnish controller integrate with Varnish running containers? No consistent hash, and what about caches? Do you see that in the chat, Frederick?
Yes. So no consistent hashing. Yes, we have been experimenting with consistent hashing. This will not be implemented in the first version, but we definitely will have it in the future. I'm not sure about and what about the caches, but maybe we could get a clarification on that. But can you route traffic in the traffic router based on the URL?
Does channel 1 need to go to the edge?
Yes, not at this particular moment, but we are looking into making it possible to run your own rules in the traffic router.
All right. We've got more questions coming in, so thank you, everyone. Hi, is traffic router able to keep users on the same node to keep the same connection active and same time on connections?
Yes, you can use the history cache for that. Then you will specify a time for how long you want that user to go to the same Varnish. Of course, it will also be service checked. So if there would be a problem with that node, it then would choose another one, and then it would be stick to that server also.
Okay. And then what are traffic routing? Does it work on manifest level as well? So only manifest files are redirected to edge servers and media served from there.
So there's no manifest introspection or anything like that. So it's only URL based or DNS based at this point in time.
Okay, great. And then we did have clarification on the what about caches? They mean how are they deployed? K8s or STLs?
Oh, you can deploy it in as you like. It doesn't really matter.
And then the traffic router has to be implemented on a separate server. And what specs do you suggest?
Well, that depends on your workload, of course, but the traffic router can run together with other services, of course. But if you have a lot of traffic, you would run this on your own servers. Traffic routers are also pretty important to keep up and running. So because they are routing your traffic, but when it comes to specs, hard to say. It's very dependent on the workload and if it is DNS or HTTP based routing. But the traffic that actually flows through the traffic router is so small.
Okay. And then are you using 302 or 301 HTTP redirection?
I think it's 302.
Okay. Open caching was mentioned in the first slide about traffic router. Can you elaborate on that?
Oh, of course. So open caching is a super interesting project, which we are a member of and is in the different working groups. Our traffic router will support open caching in the future. So this is the first step to actually be compatible with open caching.
Okay, and then is the traffic router built on top of Varnish Cache Plus, or is it a different piece of software?
It's a different piece of software.
Okay, great. So I think that is all our time for today. Thank you everyone for attending and joining with us. Again, this session will be recorded. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to your Varnish representative or support, and we'll be happy to discuss more about these exciting new features. Frederick, thank you again for joining us, and a great rest of the day for everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.